Agriculture has never been simple. It's shaped by weather and markets, policy and politics, forces that often originate far from the farm gate. Headlines move fast, policies shift, markets react, but the impact of those changes doesn't just show up on screen, it shows up on farms and ranches, in families and rural communities. This podcast is about taking the time to explore what's happening in agriculture and what it means for the people living it, with clarity, context, and perspective. I'm Corryn La Rue, and this is Farm Unfiltered. Rising fertilizer costs are once again tightening margins for U.S. farmers, and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins says the federal government is moving into what she describes as a full-scale response effort across agencies, markets, and international supply chains. Speaking during a recent press event in Higginsville, Missouri, Rollins says the increase in input costs is both immediate and structural, with fertilizer leading the pressure point heading into the growing season.
I know this is top of mind for every single farmer in America, and it certainly is top of mind for our team at USDA. We know that urea prices have gone up 50% over the last month. Ammonia is up 30% or more over the last month. Our farmers are feeling that pinch. To be clear, this has been a problem for years. The actual numbers are lower, believe it or not, than they were even in 2022. But nevertheless, that jump in prices overnight, we have to address. We've got to come up with solutions, and we've got to work to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Rollins says the current situation reflects both long-standing structural issues in fertilizer markets and new global instability.
The loss of competition in the fertilizer industry has obviously led to higher fertilizer costs over time. The last administration watched a lot of this happen, and now we are inheriting that. But when combined with what's happening overseas with the current geopolitical issues facing our world, certainly we have come to a crossroads that requires immediate action. This is indeed a matter of national security, and we are working to tackle it head on.
Rollins says USDA is now coordinating what she calls a full-scale, all-of-government effort to stabilize fertilizer markets and strengthen long-term supply security. So among the immediate steps, the administration just announced an additional extension waiving the Jones Act for another 60 days, allowing more flexibility in transporting goods between U.S. ports. So by temporarily lifting restrictions that require U.S.-built and U.S. crewed vessels for coast-wise trade, officials say the move is intended to speed the movement of fertilizer between ports and help address regional shortages driven by global disruptions and recent price spikes. On supply diversification, she added,
we have opened up lines of fertilizer from Venezuela. I think we'll have another countries we'll be able to announce very soon. We have reinstated potash on the U.S. final list of critical minerals in addition to phosphate, both key fertilizer ingredients that we can readily produce in America.
Rollins says USDA is increasing scrutiny of fertilizer pricing and market behavior in coordination with the Department of Justice.
Last year, we signed a joint agreement, USDA did, with the Department of Justice, an MOU ensuring that farmers have access to competitive and affordable inputs, indeed looking into the activities of our fertilizer companies and what has happened over the last few years, but with a new eye on potential price gouging right now. We will continue that. I had a meeting with our new Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche in Washington just about 48 hours ago to continue that important conversation with a renewed focus on that.
A central pillar of the administration's strategy is rebuilding domestic fertilizer manufacturing. Rollins points to decades of offshoring as a key vulnerability.
We're also working across the cabinet to catalyze and accelerate private investment and have met with many of the major fertilizer companies in our office recently. As we adopt solutions here in the short term, we're also confronting that critical long-term reality, which is that America has offshored for far too long, far too much of our fertilizer production, leaving us dangerously reliant on Russia and China. Changing that long-standing industry that is reliant on global markets won't happen overnight, unfortunately, but working with our farmers and across industry and government, we will find ways to make fertilizer that we can do here in America and make sure it is a price that our great farmers can afford.
Rollins outlines a more aggressive federal push to accelerate fertilizer infrastructure development, including coordination with the Department of Commerce.
I have met with and in constant communication with the rest of the cabinet, or most of the cabinet, on this issue. But just as an example, Secretary Howard Lutnick is our Secretary of Commerce. He has built, and with the president's leadership, a significant investment fund for America to reshore. And so what I have asked Howard to do and his team to do, and what we're doing in partnership, is to identify a significant number. I'm not ready to give you the number yet, hopefully next week, that we can deploy into building out fertilizer plants in America. And we've already begun to identify all over the country. Some are under production. How do we move them along more quickly? But some are in the permitting bureaucracy, which it sometimes takes years to get through permitting. And our goal is to, instead of years, to get through permitting in a matter of weeks or perhaps months, so that even in 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years, we will have facilities up and running that we will have never had that opportunity or option before. And the reason this is encouraging from my perspective, that we'll go one step a little bit deeper on this, is President Trump in term one brought back the idea of America being energy independent. Why that's important: for most of American history, we were a net importer of LNG. And so we were reliant on other countries' LNG. Because of the policies that were implemented in the first Trump term, and I was his domestic policy chief, so I'm very well aware of this, we became, in a matter of just a short period of time, a net exporter of LNG versus importer, meaning we were producing our own energy in America, so much so that we no longer had to rely on other countries. The reason that is important is, as our farmers are facing these exponential nitrogen fertilizer costs, we now have the resources in America. We just have to build the facilities, the manufacturing facilities, to turn that LNG into nitrogen. So this is going to happen quicker than you would normally expect, I think, because of the pieces of the puzzle that have already been put into place. And next week, hopefully, we'll be announcing exactly what those numbers look like. I'll perhaps be visiting a few of these potential sites in the coming 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll have more announcements to come.
Even with accelerated action, Rollins says new domestic capacity will take time to reach the market.
We're ready to move immediately, but to actually take a plant online, it's billions of dollars. And that could be hopefully between, I'd say, 12 to 18 months. We'll begin to see it beginning to reshore onshore again. In the meantime, focusing on those short-term solutions for our farmers, whether that is opening up more lines from other countries, waiving the Jones Act, looking at countervailing duties that are on a lot of our fertilizer coming from other countries, ensuring that we've got more transparency into what these charges look like, working with the Department of Justice and others, working with great American companies like the CF Fertilizer Company out of Illinois. They have said, in order to protect our farmers, we are going to stop maintenance. We are going to look at holding our prices steady. And they're an example of other great American companies. So working hand in hand, I'm in communication with those CEOs regularly now. I didn't know who they were until about 60 days ago, but now working hand in hand to look at the short term as well.
Still, for many producers, the immediate reality is difficult. While recent federal relief payments have potential to provide support, a growing share of those dollars is being absorbed by steadily rising input costs. Rollins told me that while farmers ultimately decide how to spend those funds, many who had planned investments in infrastructure or expansion are now redirecting that money toward fertilizer and other essential inputs.
We've moved out tens of billions of dollars in payments over the last 12 to 14 months. I did talk in the roundtable a little bit with the farmers, though it's obviously up to them how to spend that money. I do hear that now a lot of them were planning to perhaps invest in a new roof on their barn, or expanding their herd, or planting a few more crops, and now instead they likely will have to spend that money on fertilizer if this doesn't solve itself very, very quickly. The larger question for me, while we're trying to solve for the short term, the larger question for me is, when you look at a chart, and I'm sorry I don't have one with me, but when you look at a chart of the amount of government payment, and these farmers don't want to farm for a government check. Let me say that first and foremost. The importance of opening up all of these markets around the world, the importance of opening up the domestic market for biofuels cannot be overstated how important that is. But when you look at the actual economics of the amount of money that that has been put into the system for these farmers to just barely survive year to year, and you can see on a chart, it's basically held steady. Farm income, farmers, row croppers especially, over the last few years have really been struggling. But at the same time, where you see the struggle of the farmer, you see the input companies continue to make more and more money. The costs go higher and higher. This is before the Iranian conflict. The cost of fertilizer has increased between 30 and 40%. The cost of seeds have increased between 30 and 40%. The cost of equipment right around that as well. And so why is that happening? And why is it tracking that every time we send government payments out to the farmers, they barely survive, but these big companies continue to make record profits? These are existential questions for the future of agriculture in America that I am asking, and I am pushing really hard, again, across the cabinet, and I think we'll keep talking about that and hopefully be able to begin to change that trajectory.
For USDA, the path forward is a dual-track strategy. Stabilize the immediate market while restructuring long-term fertilizer production and trade dynamics. But for farmers heading into planting season, the pressure is already here. As Rollins puts it plainly, our farmers are feeling that pinch. As fertilizer markets continue to tighten, the question for agriculture now is whether policy can move fast enough to match the speed of the price spike, and whether structural change can arrive before the next cycle of volatility begins again. That's it for today. As always, the goal here is to better understand what's happening in agriculture and what it means beyond the headlines. I'm Corryn La Rue, and this is Farm Unfiltered.